That is unbelievable. That smallmouth bass has no idea I'm here. There's a good one. See you, buddy. Thank you.
Hello there, and welcome everyone. Today we're fishing part of the Tennessee River drainage in North Carolina because we're targeting native smallmouth bass. There are only 3 native species of black bass in the Tennessee River drainage: the smallmouth bass, the spotted bass, and the largemouth bass. You also have 2 non-native species of black bass in the Tennessee River drainage: the red-eye bass, which is only native to the Coosa River drainage in the Mobile Basin, and the Alabama bass, which is also native to the Mobile River Basin. Red-eye bass were introduced to several streams in Tennessee by the Tennessee Game and Fish Commission in the 1950s, but they have never been documented in North Carolina. You do have native Bartram's bass in North Carolina because a small part of the Savannah River drainage is in the southwestern part of that state near the border with South Carolina and Georgia. Some anglers still call Bartram's bass red-eye bass. The rock bass is also sometimes called a red-eye bass, but you do not have true red-eye bass in North Carolina. The other non-native species that is unfortunately in North Carolina is the Alabama bass. Alabama bass were illegally introduced by anglers to the Tennessee River drainage in Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And one of the problems with Alabama bass is that they look kind of like spotted bass. And for about 70 years, they were classified as a subspecies of spotted bass from 1940 to 2008. So pretty much everybody still calls them spotted bass. But Alabama bass were never really spotted bass. Spotted bass and smallmouth bass are both native to the Tennessee River drainage in the greater Mississippi River Basin. So hybridization between those 2 species is not all that common. That's why they've been able to persist together in the same drainage for a long period of time. But when humans introduce non-native species of black bass, they readily hybridize with other species. Alabama bass aggressively hybridize with other species, including both smallmouth and spotted bass. I know a lot of people probably hear that and they go, well, at least they're not snakeheads. Because they're a bass, a lot of anglers don't really consider Alabama bass to be a threat. But that would be a mistake, because the fact they can reproduce and hybridize with other species makes them even more dangerous. So why is hybridization such a big deal? Well, when Alabama bass spawn with smallmouth and spotted bass, they're going to produce thousands of hybrid offspring that'll reach maturity in just 2 or 3 years. Smallmouth and spotted bass that spawn with Alabama bass, or any of these hybrids, are not making more smallmouth and spotted bass, unless they spawn with multiple individuals. So not only do you have a bad year class, but your smallmouth and spotted bass are making thousands of hybrids. That's how Alabama bass and their hybrids completely eliminate and replace smallmouth and spotted bass from a body of water. We know this because at one time we had 3 different river systems in Georgia with native smallmouth bass: the Hiwassee River, the Notley River, and the Toccoa River. But non-native Alabama bass were illegally introduced by anglers to man-made impoundments in each of these river systems: Lake Chatuge on the Hiwassee River, Lake Notley on the Notley River, and Blue Ridge Lake on the Toccoa River. These illegal introductions started over 30 years ago, and today Alabama bass have colonized all streams flowing into and out of these impoundments. So you no longer have catchable populations of native smallmouth and spotted bass. Not only that, but the Alabama bass have spread downstream into North Carolina and Tennessee via the Hiwassee and Ocoee River systems. Unfortunately, what a lot of people don't seem to understand or care about is that Alabama bass are a river fish. They use current to forage more efficiently, so when you stock them in a lake or pond, they're going to colonize all creeks and rivers flowing into and out of that water body. A perfect example of that is right here in North Carolina. Some angler or anglers illegally stocked Alabama bass in Lake Julian, which is a 300-acre man-made lake in Asheville, North Carolina. And like all man-made lakes and ponds, you have some kind of overflow or outflow structure near the dam. When water passes over or through that structure, it creates current that attracts game fish like the Alabama bass. Some fish get too close, usually while feeding, and are displaced downstream. That's unfortunately what happened here at Lake Julian, and the French Broad River is about 2,000 feet downstream, so you now have Alabama bass in the French Broad River. And this is a map from NorthCarolinaWildlife.org showing the current known distribution of Alabama bass in North Carolina. And it's important to stress the word known here because these are just the populations they know about. Again, spotted bass are native to the Tennessee River drainage in North Carolina. Alabama bass are not. Alabama bass are very similar in appearance to spotted bass. However, spotted bass do not grow as large or as fast as Alabama bass. In creeks and rivers, spotted bass usually max out around 18 inches, but in man-made impoundments they can exceed 20 inches. Alabama bass can exceed 20 inches in creeks and rivers and max out around 23 inches in some man-made impoundments. Alabama bass also generally have a more streamlined and elongated body shape, while spotted bass usually are more football-shaped. Spotted bass also typically have 7 to 10 blotches on the back called dorsal blotches. Some of these dorsal blotches will touch the base of the spiny dorsal fin. Alabama bass have 10 to 12 dorsal blotches that usually do not touch the base of the spiny dorsal fin. And because Alabama bass have more of these dorsal blotches, they're going to be smaller than the dorsal blotches you see on spotted bass. The midlateral stripe on a spotted bass typically has around 12 dark, diamond-shaped blotches along the midline of the body. On a spotted bass, these blotches become shorter and often coalesce into a solid stripe near the tail. On most Alabama bass, the midlateral stripe typically has around 15 or more dark, diamond-shaped blotches along the midline of the body. Like the spotted bass, these blotches often get smaller near the tail. However, unlike spotted bass, the midlateral stripe on the Alabama bass will typically end in a series of blotches instead of a solid stripe. And because Alabama bass have more of these midlateral blotches, they're going to be smaller than the midlateral blotches you see on most spotted bass. NorthCarolinaWildlife.org is a great resource if you want to learn more about Alabama bass and how they can negatively impact different fisheries. They also have a phone number you can call to report people moving fish, and if you catch an Alabama bass where they have not been previously documented, you can contact them directly at this address. In this video, I'm fishing with my friend John, and if he looks familiar, he used to post on the old Georgia Kayak Fishing Forum. John is retired and lives in North Carolina now and likes catching smallmouth bass in his spare time. We've fished this river one other time, but we've never fished this section. There were a lot of suckers in this part of the river. The water was low and clear, so you could see the larger ones a long way off. North Carolina has around 30 native species of suckers, but most of the suckers you'll see in the first part of this video are smallmouth buffalo, but a few could have been black buffalo. When the water's clear in the summer, both species can be really dark, almost black, so you can't go by color when you see these fish. The smallmouth buffalo is a lot more common, so that's probably what most, if not all of these are. Smallmouth buffalo are native to the Tennessee drainage, the Greater Mississippi Basin, and the Mobile Basin in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. And in this image, you can see the difference between a smallmouth buffalo and a freshwater drum. Suckers like the smallmouth buffalo have deeply forked tails, while the freshwater drum has a rounded tail. You can also see the position of the pelvic and anal fins are very different on both of these fish. By the way, I did want to apologize for not being more active on this channel. I also wanted to thank everyone for their patience. I really appreciate it, and I will definitely be posting videos on a more regular basis going forward. This video was shot in late August, so a long time before the remnants of Hurricane Helene moved through North Carolina. The water was extremely low and clear, so the fish were feeding primarily by sight. Whenever I find these conditions in the summer, I'm usually going to start with some kind of topwater as a search bait. I really like a buzzbait anytime I might be fishing near fast water and throwing at the bank. It's got a single hook, but even if you add a trailer hook, it's still a lot easier to cast and fish around trees and brush that hang over the water compared to, say, a lure with multiple treble hooks. You're just going to be a lot more efficient, which translates into more casts and usually more fish at the end of the day. We're also floating several miles downriver, so we're making a lot of casts while the kayak is moving, and I prefer single hook lures in that situation. If this was a solo trip, or any time I'm wading and fishing upstream against the current, that's when I'm more likely going to use a bait with multiple treble hooks. And that's because when you're wading, you're casting from a stationary position, so your casts are going to be more accurate. If and when you do get hung up, it's also a lot easier to retrieve a lure when you're wading upstream. Again, this trip was back in late August, so real hot, sunny conditions. The water is extremely low and clear. This is also a big river, a lot bigger than most places I usually fish. The channel is very wide. That makes shade extremely important in areas that don't have a lot of current, where there's little or no surface turbulence. Shade can come from trees growing on the bank, wood cover in the water, large rocks, and bedrock outcrops. So that's what I'm looking for in those areas. Shade is usually less important where you have fast water and lots of current, because those areas have lots of turbulence. Surface turbulence, whitewater turbulence, all that turbulence cuts down on the amount of light entering the water. So I'm going to look for current seams and eddies when I'm fishing those areas. I'm also more likely to be power fishing those areas with a faster moving lure like the Buzzbait. And in the areas that don't have a lot of current, I generally prefer finesse techniques in the summer, especially when the water's low and clear. So I hope you liked the video, and thanks for watching.
I just missed one right there, but he was probably small on the Buzzbait. Little guy on the Wacky-rigged. See you, buddy. Now, I may not catch a fish here, but this is kind of a neat spot because we've got kind of a wide spot in the channel here. The river just kind of spreads out, and it's not real deep here, as you can see. And what happens is there's a road right here, and they've put a bunch of rock, a bunch of riprap maybe, and they've built this up right here to prevent erosion. And let this truck go by. When the water's up, there's a lot of scouring action along this bank with all those big rocks there, and that water over there against that bank, you might not be able to tell it from here, but it's a little deeper than where I'm standing. And there's also a little shade over there, but that's a good spot for a big smallmouth. A lot of people would probably paddle right by this spot, especially if they were sitting down paddling or on a trolling motor. You know, if they have an electric motor and they're sitting going by this spot, they might not even, you know, notice this type of spot, but some might. But anyway, it's kind of a subtle out of the way place. I really like the way that you've got a big log, a big hardwood old tree right there. There's probably a washed out place under that log, and it's in the shade over there. That's a real nice looking spot. But you know, this is the kind of place a lot of people would overlook. You can see it's just a little bit deeper right up against that bank, and that's from the scouring action of the current when the water's up. There's a good one. He's got 3 more with him. One of them's a little bit bigger than this one. He's trying to take that. Those are all suckers right there. Now one of those was not a sucker. Well, there's another smallmouth that's 3 or 4 pounds with this guy. I got to hurry up and get him in. I don't want to horse this one, but there's a really nice smallmouth right there. This one's no slouch. This is the best one I've caught all day. That's about a 14 or so inch fish. There we go. Oh yeah. That was a nice jump. Another nice jump. He's not big, he's about like the last one. I thought he was going to be a little nicer. All right, buddy. It's hooked in the back of the tongue, that's why he jumped. Very pretty smallmouth. Get this guy back in the water. It's pretty hot. See you, buddy. Thanks. Another pretty little smallmouth. See you, buddy. I just caught one on the old Buzzbait, but my camera wasn't rolling. Pretty guy. See you, buddy.
Kept sliding down the big head.
Oh yeah. I finally caught one on the Buzzbait, but my camera was off. Uh-oh. Yeah. Oh, sorry, buddy. Yeah, right on the edge of that current seam right there. There's some slack water, and then there's a seam with those bubbles. He was right on the edge of it. You know, he's pushing 14 inches. See you, buddy. Thanks. Yeah, he's right on the edge of that current seam right there. There's a little bit of shade in that pocket. A spotted bass. And when I say spotted bass, I mean Micropterus punctulatus. Typically in the creeks and rivers, they don't get much, you know, they max out around 16, 18 inches. Here in the southeast, you may find a few places where they get up around 18 inches. But this one's just a hair over 13. This fish has a more robust shape than the Alabama bass you've seen me catch a lot of here this year. Not only is the fish more robust, it has fewer blotches, mid-lateral blotches. There are fewer of them, and because there's fewer of them, they're large. Because there's fewer of them, they're larger. This fish just does not want to sit on this board. But it's a nice spotted bass there. It's a little garter snake. They're really good swimmers. You can bite me. He bit me. They usually do, but then they settle down. I just paddled over to this bank and there's a bass right there. Look at that. I guess I spooked some shiners off this bank. Look at that smallmouth. He's coming right over here. That is unbelievable. That smallmouth bass has no idea I'm here. That is unbelievable. That's about a 14 or 15 inch smallmouth bass right there. Oh, he's after that little hog sucker. That's probably what that smallmouth was looking for. Now if I start walking over here, he'll take off. See, there he goes. He had no idea I was here. But the reason I came over here was to release this small garter snake. He was swimming across the river there, and I figured I'd help him on his way on over here to make sure the ospreys didn't get him. There were a couple ospreys flying around, and he's small enough that bass might take a shot at him. But just a little garter snake that I'm gonna release. See you, buddy. There goes a great blue heron. That guy surely would have eaten that garter snake. If he had seen it. I turned around to grab my kayak to pull it up on the bank, and there was like a 14-15 inch smallmouth like swimming right there on the other side of my kayak. I think he was going after those hog suckers. Wow. That you know, they were in like 6 inches of water. A little better. Definitely got all of it. 12 or so inches. I know there's one right there. Little. I don't think he was even ever hooked. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, we got it. That's a nice one, folks. Glad I did not give up on the Finesse. So that one is almost 19. He's right at 19. I think if I was in a tournament, I could make him go 19. But it's hot. I don't want to hold this fish out of the water. You know, I'm not on social media other than YouTube, so there's no reason to really stress this fish out any more than I already have. So see you, buddy. Thank you. There she goes. Right back under that sycamore tree right there.
Okay, I wasn't real happy with the audio at this point in the video, but I want to talk about this spot real quick because it's kind of a smaller version of the first spot, and I catch a lot of bass, especially smallmouth bass, from places like this in August and September when the water's low and clear. And I made this topo map so you can see what's going on in case it wasn't clear enough in the video. This map was made from a screen capture image of the river channel, which is important because I wanted the channel width and the size, shape, and placement of the channel bends to be accurate. That way you can see why some areas are productive and others aren't. So let's talk about this area. Due to weathering and erosion, the bedrock actually forms a constriction here. This one happens to be next to the bank. A lot of the better ones are next to the bank because you not only have more shade from trees, but you also find more trees and logs in the water along the bank. That's not to say a tree can't wash up somewhere on a shoal out in the middle of the river. You can also find bedrock features like this constriction away from the bank, and they can be really productive. But these areas near the bank are a little different. We already talked about the shade and the wood cover in the water, but you also find more sunfish, especially species that are more bank-oriented like bluegill, redbreast, and long-ear sunfish. You can also have mats of grass, leaves, and other debris that wash up against trees and logs along the bank and the bank itself. But getting back to this spot, the main reason the fish are here is because we were in the middle of a drought. So the water was extremely low and clear. And this area was just a little deeper than basically everything around it. Most of the water in this section was less than 2 feet deep, but this area was 2 to 4 feet deep. And you might be wondering how I found this spot because this is a pretty big river and the channel in this section was about 400 feet wide. When the water's low and clear, you can see where a lot of the deeper holes are once you get within casting distance. But on a bigger river like this, I'm always looking at the surface of the water, especially when I get to a wide, shallow section like this. Yes, I'm always looking for any kind of fish movement or activity, but I'm also trying to read the water. And when I say read the water, I'm looking at the surface of the water for any kind of disturbance or turbulence. Usually riffles, eddies, boils, and current seams. I'm also looking for areas that don't have any turbulence. When I'm fishing a wide, shallow, rocky section like this, areas with little or no turbulence visible on the surface of the water really stand out. Those areas are generally going to have deeper water. And when I'm in a deeper section with little or no turbulence visible on the surface, the turbulent areas really stand out and usually indicate shallow water, some kind of cover, or maybe a change in channel gradient and current speed. All of those things could potentially hold fish. On this map, the arrows represent turbulence on the surface of the water. When water flows over or around a stationary object like a rock, Eddies and boils form on the surface and travel a certain distance downstream before they dissipate. So the arrows on this map not only represent turbulence, but also the direction and distance it travels downstream. And right here on the map, you can see there's little or no turbulence around this deeper area I was fishing. And when I say deeper, the deepest water here was maybe 3 or 4 feet deep, and the fish were holding in water that was around 2 feet deep. There were a couple pieces of wood cover that had washed into this spot, which is pretty common. These areas often collect trees and logs or pieces of them that bass will use as cover to ambush prey. There's also a channel bend right here. It's not much of a bend, but anytime the channel forms a curve, you're going to have some water and current moving to the outside of the bend. So any prey drifting or swimming with the current will be drawn into this area. So this spot was formed by weathering and erosion of the bedrock, but depressions and holes can also form anywhere sediment is removed by the scouring action of the current, kind of like the first spot. Scour occurs when water erodes the sediment that surrounds a stationary object, and it's usually caused by fast-moving water during floods and high water periods.
The cinnamon black 5-inch Senko. They were out of the green pumpkin black, so I went with the cinnamon black, which is always a good backup. Cinnamon black is good too if you happen to be fishing around a lot of other people that throw green pumpkin. Not a big one, but a better one. Not better than the last one, but better than average, I should say. I got some kind of horsefly all over me. Here we go. 14-incher or so. Beautiful smallmouth bass. See you, buddy. He was just right in that little depression right there. There's a little, just a depression in the bedrock there.
Now, Whopper Flopper, actually, Chapo is working pretty good. Little ones, but...
Yeah. I figured I'd come tell you, so I caught a 19-incher on a Wacky-rig. Yeah. And there was 2 more that size with him. But, yeah. Okay. And he was under that sycamore tree kind of in the shade. It was like a couple of hardwood logs down there, just one fish. I mean, but I figured I'd let you know.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, John's got one on his, is that a Whopper Plopper or the Chapo?
Chapo.
Okay.
It's a good fish.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna need some pliers. Oh, now he's got the rope. Oh, good job.
Well, good idea. Took the Buzzbait off.
I hear that osprey up there. He's not too happy. Little smallmouth. Pretty little guy. See you, buddy. 12 inches or so. There we go. It's a really nice 14-inch smallmouth. You gotta put him back because we're about to go for a ride. See you, buddy.